So thank you for that. I'll just take about 10 minutes or so of your time on this. I'm not sure if you noticed HDS Australia, New Zealand, launched in partnership with a company called Tech Research Asia. A study piece on the state of the nation. It relates to digital transformation readiness or maturity within the Australian enterprise market. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look, hopefully at the end of this you'll decide to go online and find that link and download that report. Really what it was trying to understand was where are Australian organisations on the scale of completion as it relates to digital transformation agenda. We know through a bunch of our own research that data underpins everything with relationship to enabling digital transformation. Being a data company, it is after all our middle name. We'd like to think that we've got a big part to play in companies that are making that transition. So we wanted to help provide some conversation pointers for the Australian New Zealand businesses, and that has gone exceptionally well with conversations and presentations around some formats we did with CXO Disrupt just recently. This, however, is a global version of that. It goes a little bit deeper, and it's certainly a lot more breadth in terms of its coverage. But it was run by Forbes for us globally, and it was really trying to understand this, what is the landscape in businesses around that very subjective view of transformation, identify what the inhibitors are to people succeeding on that journey, and finally, of those that are leaders, what can we learn from them? What are the things that they are doing to be the most successful? For us to achieve that, we surveyed, we had to keep this at a very senior level in terms of the companies that we were surveying, because this is really a top-down agenda as it relates to the real change within a business that's required. You can't do this from the bottom up, it's got to be a top-down review. So this was all about hitting the C-levels within this, so that the companies were 573 C-level execs. Now I know the numbers were skewed towards CEOs and COOs, about 40-something% of them were that level, and there was a range of CIOs and CFOs also. They were big companies, okay? They were $500 million plus companies. We think that's the litmus test of where things are progressing, and that will have a flow-on effect to other size companies. And it was spread globally, so you see those numbers, 39% North America, if my geography is correct, 28% in European continent, and 34% across ANZ. The way that, I think this is, the way that Forbes put people into categories are around this ad hoc through to leader view. Now, this is actually quite similar to what we saw in our Tech Research Asia report, in that many people were calling themselves very advanced on the cycle of digital transformation. You see there, over 45% or so are calling themselves in the leadership or advanced. The problem we have around this is that I don't think that's true to an enterprise-wide perspective. It just can't be. Companies can't have completely transformed their business to the tune of 45%. So you have to back it up a little bit and understand what people are answering here. Firstly, digital transformation can be a number of things. It can be seen as digitizing a very manual process, taking a paper-based form and turning it electronic. That's not enterprise-wide and shouldn't really sit on the top end of this scale. But I think some people are subjectively measuring themselves against that. But equally, I think it's more to do with people don't see this as a completed journey. They see it that they're leading in the race towards digital transformation. And I'll use a couple of examples there that I think would play out here. You look at something like Telstra in Australia. Now, Telstra have got a massive agenda on digitising the way they engage customer service. So they want as many things done electronically as possible. And they're very well advanced on that. But would any one of you really say that Telstra is a massively different business today than they were 5 or 10 years ago? We wouldn't see them as that. But I bet if they were in that audience, they would have put themselves higher on that because they've made massive changes compared to where they were. I'll make another comparison. A company in the insurance business, IAG, huge investment in doing all the right things around digital labs. Amazing in the way they're transforming, the way they're thinking about their products and how they're going to go to market. They are well ahead of most people in that space. But are they really, if you fully completed the transformation of the business, it's seen as a journey and it's a long way to go, but incredible steps have been taken. And the final one I'd mention would be around Service New South Wales. So the New South Wales state government putting one entity around digitising the way they engage with ratepayers and registrations and things in the first instance. Huge gains in the way we can interact and make payments, but again, nowhere near completed yet. So just consider that in terms of a journey, and a number of people, probably rightly so, put themselves in that advanced and leader group. What makes me think, though, that that's actually not a completed journey is, so that's the leaders and laggards, which we'll use as those headings a little bit further on. So I just want you to remember that 45% for a moment, because 45% are advanced and leaders, and if you take that for how you might interpret that as a first read, you'd say it's done then, right? We're finished. Everyone's happy. We're all made the transformation and back to business. But if you dig this next one, it kind of says that that's not the case. So 49% of companies expect to undergo vast digital transformation in the next 2 years. Now, that in and of itself is not a big surprise, right? 45% said they were advanced and leaders. So it'd be fair to say that the rest of them think they've got to catch up, so they've got a vast transformation underway in the next 2 years. The problem is when you scratch the surface of that and you look at the next 2 data points that are there, 61% of those are actually in that leader category. So they're in the advanced and leaders in terms of where they are in transformation, but ask them the question of what they need to do in the next 2 years, and they're saying we need to transform. So A, supports my view before that they're not finished, but secondly, it supports the view that digital transformation actually won't stop now. We're making vast changes in the way we do our business, but it's not a project. It's not something you set a scope and a set of deliverables and you tick them off and you're finished and you go to the next budget cycle of a project. This thing's not going to stop. So that's our interpretation of what those results are saying, and I think it's very resounding in terms of the numbers. So just to close out, this is a very brief summary of what Forbes found, and then I'm just going to use a few data points for you on ANZ versus global numbers in a moment. But first, this is their summary of what the recommendations are. Probably not groundbreaking to you, but it's worth a consideration reading each one of them in the context of your business and just thinking through where you might be on those. So prioritise and invest in digital transformation. It can't just be a nod to it. It needs to actually be an investment that you take consideration and plan for. It's always about business outcomes. So to Hugh's point around productivity and the lack of gains of all this technology that we've been deploying says there is something wrong. This has got to be driven from a business outcome perspective, not a technology perspective. It is about becoming data-driven. We didn't pay them to say that. That's what the market is entirely saying. You don't make any of these changes without data being at the core of it. It's an enterprise-wide approach is best. I did the summits recently with Disrupt events, and we were talking about it's okay to be transformative in one stream, to think about some process that you want to try and digitise and make more efficient. The thing you really need to look out for is the peripheral vision of what other transformations you can pick up and sweep into that process along the way. And it takes me back to the point I'd been making around Twitter. And Biz Stone is one of the founders of Twitter, and his view was, we started something we didn't know what it was going to be. We didn't expect to make Twitter. We set up a software application to work out where our mates were at the pub. That was what they did. It turned into this global juggernaut of news delivery. No way could they have intended that. So I'm not saying we don't plan for our businesses anymore. What I am saying is, if you are doing a plan to make some sweeping change, then just keep an eye out for the peripheral vision of things that might come up in terms of opportunities to make it bigger than that. And it's a balance of people and technology. I mean, I think the balance is more shifted towards people, quite frankly, but it's worth noting that they call it a balance of people and technology. Now, a quick summary of some ANZ numbers, because I just picked out the things that I found quite fascinating in this data. Not so fascinating as the first point to the left, is that Australians see it as a customer expectation, customer experience drive. That's the business outcome that we mainly hold the most important here is the actual customer outcome. And I think you see that in just about every piece of technology transformation that's been flourished and deployed here in Australia. I mentioned Telstra before. That's about people in the service industry knowing when the technician's turning up, trying to take that Uber approach of will they be there in 5 minutes, not 5 hours. That's about customer experience. To the point of the pizza delivery folks, same thing. Order it in 10 minutes, it'll be there. If it's not, it's free, and you know when the person's at the door. We have all that. It's all about owning the customer, because that helps when the competitive market comes into play from external. You've already owned the customer. So that's kind of not so surprising. What is surprising is that Australia sees it as more of a priority than the rest. I thought it would have been quite balanced. The other bit to the right-hand side is the next data point I'll point you to. So competitors within the industry. Australians aren't fearful of our competitors within the industry. We're not fearful of them making a head start against us compared to the rest of the market. we're more concerned about people that are coming in from outside. We more think that we're able to be attacked by web type players that are coming in and having a go at our market. The reason I'm not surprised by that, and it was interesting to see, but not terribly surprising, this market's quite small. I'm not sure if you noticed, and we move technology. People move within it, engineers and salespeople, and that industry moves. It's the same with any one of your industries. Banking and finance, people move within. Telecommunications, people move within. You don't actually feel like you're out of step with what's actually happening. If there's a big project underway by someone, you kind of think you'll know about it, so you're not going to get caught out. So we just don't see it as the big thing that's going to drive our change here, because we just don't think we'll ever get caught too much on the hop. Just to reinforce that view around customer engagement, back to 27% of the global ones were saying retention, engagement and acquisition. The other thing I took away from this was that because of our scale in Australia versus the scale of some really huge organisations in Europe and the US, who've grown so big so fast, there's lots of inefficiencies within their business. They're more interested in trying to return efficiency than they are about the customer. Our scale is quite different. We're kind of fairly well tuned to what our market opportunity is, and so that's not our focus. It's more about customer engagement to grow revenue and top line. This is the last data point, just to make a mention of from the results. So the two things that stood out, it was that was that operational efficiency piece I mentioned to the right. You know, global, very focused on that, not so much in Australia. The customer-centric and then the data-centric side. So we seem to understand very much in Australia the importance of the data. And I think that's because we have such a tight alignment back to the customer. You know what your customer's doing, data, you know what you can do to make your business more effective in engaging them. So it's just not vastly different to the rest of the market, but I think it was worth pointing out in terms of Australia's perspective against global. So that's the final data points in the comparison to Forbes. I think we launched it last night globally. So it is available to download and get access to. Please take a chance to take a look, have a conversation within your business around it, and consider those 5 points there in the context of your own business.